Okay, welcome everyone. We have three great speakers for this session, which is on the topic of innovations in the preprint landscape. But before I introduce our speaker, we have two speakers online and one speaker here in person. But before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to give you a little bit of context about the COAR perspective on preprints. So I'm going to take you through a very short presentation. One thing I wanted to say was, and this is quite well understood, I would say, or acknowledged in the global community, is that the COVID-19 pandemic ushered in, activities around preprints, and preprints came out of which were generally, shared in certain fields like physics and math, has now gone beyond those fields, and especially in biomedicine, we have seen a great rise in preprint sharing. And from COAR's perspective, we think this is a very good thing, because as we know, publication times from submission to publication of an article can be up to 18 months, a year or 18 months. So that's a long time to wait for new research to be shared. On the other hand, we have not that many preprint servers. There are several large domain-based preprint servers like Archive, which is for physics and math. There's BioArchive and MedArchive, and a few other preprint servers that have grown. We have Cielo Preprints platform now that can support other preprint communities. But all of these preprints, almost all of these preprint servers, struggle with sustainability issues, especially financial sustainability. And this is a problem. Their services are at risk. So this is just some brief information also that I took from a preprint, from an article in Meta Research International Authors. Oh no, it's in eLife. And they looked at who are the researchers that are publishing preprints. And I thought it was really interesting. They looked at 67,000 preprints in BioArchive. And they found that the US and the UK, United States and United Kingdom, are overrepresented in terms of comparing their total scientific output. So the portion of scientific output of the US and the UK, the proportion of preprints are much higher. Other countries, including China, Turkey, and Russia, show lower levels of BioArchive adoption. They found these contributor countries where the researchers that were depositing preprints were very junior authors, and most of them were involved in international collaborations. And so the journals, and then they looked at the journals that were publishing preprints. Those journals that published those preprints were predominantly in the US and some European countries. And so this, in a way, benefits researchers in those countries in terms of their ability to not only share preprints, but be published after they do so. So it shows us that this landscape is far from equal. There's risk in the landscape that the services may not be able to fund their operations over time. And I think at COAR, we see an opportunity for institutional and generalist repositories to fill in the gap, provide greater sustainability in the ecosystem, support the collection of non-English preprints in places where there are no preprint servers, and so on. And because of this, we launched a preprint working group with ASCP Bio which is an organization, not-for-profit organization based in the States, and Jessica will be talking in a few minutes. And we developed recommendations because there are actually different requirements for repositories if you collect a preprint. There's different functionalities you need to have in your repository. And so what we wanted to do was to introduce the institutional and generalist repository community to that kind of functionality so that they could begin to adopt those functionalities in their repositories if they were collecting preprints. So I'm just going to take you really quickly through some of this. The document is available for free, obviously, on the COAR website, and you're welcome to go and read it and read the recommendations in more detail. And just an acknowledgement of the members of our working group. Big thanks to all the work that they did. And as you can see, it was a very multinational group. But in particular, we had several people from IBICT in Brazil who were on that group. And as well, I'd like to just point to Jessica and Arache, who are from ASAP Bio. So the recommendations are in 3 areas. One is linking across content types. So again, I'm not going to read all of these, but essentially, if you have a preprint, you want to be able to link, for example, to the published article or any other version of that preprint if it's not in the same repository. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of what bioRxiv does. So, for example, bioRxiv may have 3 versions of the same preprint, and they will direct you to the most recent version. Or medRxiv, here, this is an example of them connecting to the published version in a journal. And here's Archive, which shows the connection, which has a DOI for the published version, and also the submission history of the preprint. And our friends at HAL, who are here with us today, they also are very good at linking out to the different versions. So at HAL, they often collect a preprint that is also in archive, because they need to collect the entire output of France. So they link the version that they have with the version that's in archive. The second set of recommendations are around discovery. So we know that researchers use mainly domain discovery systems for preprints. And so we want to ensure that any preprints that are in institutional repositories are reflected in those discovery services. So one of the recommendations here is if you do collect preprints, you assign a preprint set in the OA IPMH record, and you clearly indicate in the metadata it's a preprint. So a couple of examples, this is just one. Sciety is a service by eLife that is aggregating preprints from many different data providers. So we want to ensure that, all of our preprints that may be in Japanese or Brazilian, Portuguese, or Spanish or whatever are visible. And then I just wanted to show you this, the Europe PMC, because they also now are aggregating metadata and full text of preprints, and they have a criteria for preprint servers. So we need to keep we need to be aware of what these various criteria are so that we can ensure that we're addressing them. And then the last one is editorial processes, because obviously there's a difference between a preprint and a published journal, and the main difference is that it's peer reviewed. So I think it's important, and that's what we learned from the work that we did through this this joint task group is that it's important for readers to know that it's a preprint and that it hasn't been published, or it hasn't been peer reviewed, shall we say. So just an example of what medRxiv puts on their website. Archive publishes their moderation process, for example, to tell readers what kind of moderation they do.